Hello, everyone. I still remember the first time I truly felt fear. Not the small kind of fear that comes when you watch a scary movie or hear a strange sound at night. I am talking about the kind of fear that sits deep in your stomach, makes your hands shake, and fills your head with 1,000 what-if questions. It was the kind of fear that made me doubt myself, made me think I was too weak, too small, too unprepared for the challenges ahead. At that time, I believed fear was a wall I could never climb over. It stood in front of me, tall and unshakable, whispering, "You can't do this." But life has a way of teaching us things in surprising ways, and what I discovered later is that fear is not a wall at all. It's a door, a strange door, yes, one that sometimes creaks and rattles, but if you open it and step through, you find a whole new part of yourself you didn't know existed. Let me take you back to where my journey began and how I learned to walk through that door. It was a bright morning in early spring, the kind of morning where the air feels fresh and clean. The sunlight makes the world look golden, and the sound of birds fills the silence. I had just received an opportunity, a chance to speak in front of my school about a project I had been working on for months. On the outside, I smiled and said yes without hesitation. On the inside, my heart dropped like a stone into deep water. Why? Because I had a secret. I was terrified of speaking in front of people. Even in small groups, my voice would shake, my face would get hot, and my thoughts would run away from me like frightened birds. The idea of standing in front of hundreds of people, all looking at me, waiting for me to speak, it felt impossible. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My room was quiet, but my mind was loud. I imagined myself forgetting my words, tripping over my sentences, or even worse, hearing people laugh at me. My stomach felt tight, and I wanted so badly to find an excuse to back out. But deep down, I knew this was something important, something I couldn't run from forever. Over the next few days, the fear followed me everywhere. It was like a shadow that grew longer and darker the closer I got to the big day. I would be sitting in class, trying to listen to the teacher, and suddenly, my mind would drift back to the thought of standing on that stage. My hands would feel sweaty just thinking about it. I started to notice something interesting. Fear wasn't only in my head, it was in my body too. My heartbeat would speed up, my shoulders would feel tense, and my breathing would become shallow. It was as if my whole body was getting ready for danger, even though there was no real danger at all. That's when I began to ask myself, why does fear have so much power over me? It wasn't just about this speech. Fear had stopped me from doing so many things in the past, joining a sports team, talking to new people, trying new activities. Every time fear appeared, I stepped back instead of forward, and each time I stepped back, fear grew a little stronger. One afternoon, I went for a walk in the park. The sun was warm, and I could hear children laughing in the distance. I sat on a bench and thought about my situation. I remembered something my grandfather once told me. Fear is like a bully. The more you run away from it, the stronger it gets. But if you face it, it begins to lose its power. Those words echoed in my mind. I realized I had been running from fear for years. I had been letting it control me. I asked myself a simple question. What if I just tried? Even if I failed, even if I felt scared, what would happen if I didn't run this time? That was the moment I decided I would face my fear, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. I didn't know exactly how to do it yet, but I knew I had to try. The first step was to prepare for my speech. I wrote my words carefully, keeping the sentences short and simple so I could remember them easily. Then I practiced in front of a mirror. At first, it felt awkward. I stumbled over words, looked away from my own eyes, and even laughed nervously at myself. But each time I practiced, it got a little better. Next, I practiced in front of my younger sister. She sat on the couch, watching me with a curious smile. "You sound nervous," she said honestly after my first attempt. I laughed and admitted she was right. But instead of feeling discouraged, I took her comment as a sign to keep going. I practiced every day, sometimes in my room, sometimes in the kitchen, sometimes even while walking outside. The more I practiced, the more I noticed something important. The words began to feel familiar, like an old friend. The fear was still there, but it didn't feel as heavy as before. The night before the big day, I felt the fear come back stronger than ever. My mind was filled with all the old what-if questions. What if I forget my words? What if I look foolish? What if I fail? But this time, I didn't let those thoughts control me. I reminded myself of how much I had prepared. I told myself that even if I made mistakes, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm going to try." That night, I fell asleep with a strange mix of nervousness and courage. The next morning, I woke up early. The sunlight streamed through my window, but my stomach felt like it was full of butterflies. As I walked to school, my hands trembled slightly. But I kept telling myself, "You can do this." When my turn finally came, I walked up to the stage. The bright lights made it hard to see the audience, but I could feel all their eyes on me. My heart was beating so fast, I thought it might burst out of my chest. For a second, I wanted to run away. But then I remembered my grandfather's words and the hours I had spent preparing. I took a deep breath. My voice shook a little at first, but as I continued, I began to feel more in control. The words I had practiced so many times flowed from my mouth. I looked up from my notes, met the eyes of a few people in the audience, and saw them listening, really listening. By the time I finished, something amazing happened. The audience clapped. Some people even smiled and nodded at me. I walked back to my seat with my heart still racing, but now it wasn't from fear. It was from pride. That day changed something deep inside me. I realized fear hadn't disappeared. It never truly does, but it had lost its control over me. I had proven to myself that I could feel afraid and still take action. From then on, I started noticing fear in other parts of my life. It was there when I wanted to try new things, meet new people, or take on challenges. But instead of running away, I started saying to myself, "I know you're here, fear, but you're not the boss of me." I began joining activities I had once avoided. I spoke up more in class. I even tried sports, something I had been too shy to do before. Each time I faced my fear, I grew a little stronger, a little braver. Looking back, I learned something powerful. Fear is not a sign that we are weak. Fear is a sign that we are about to grow. It means we are standing on the edge of something new and unfamiliar. And while that edge can feel scary, it is also where the magic happens. I also learned that courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite the fear. It's feeling your heart race, your hands shake, your thoughts spin, and still taking that step forward. Most importantly, I learned that fear only has as much power as we give it. The more we face it, the smaller it becomes. Now, whenever I feel fear creeping in, I remind myself of that day on the stage. I remember how my voice shook at first, how my stomach was tight, but how I spoke anyway. I remind myself that I am capable of more than I think. And I want you to know this. If you are feeling afraid of something right now, you are not alone. Fear visits everyone. But it does not have to be your master. You can beat it, not by pretending it's not there, but by facing it head on. Fear will tell you stories about failure, embarrassment, and disaster, but those are just stories. The truth is, you are stronger than you realize, braver than you believe, and more capable than you imagine. One day, you will look back at the things you were once afraid of and smile. You will see that fear was not a wall, but a door. And you will remember the moment you stepped through it and discovered a bigger, bolder version of yourself. And so, the final thing I want to leave you with is this. Fear will never completely disappear from your life, but it also never has to control you again. It will knock on your door before every big moment, whisper in your ear before every leap, and try to hold your hand back when you reach for something new. But each time you choose to step forward anyway, you take a little more of its power away. One day you'll realize fear was never there to stop you. It was there to show you what truly matters to you. The things that scare you most are often the very things that will help you grow, change, and discover who you really are. So the next time you feel your heart race, your hands sweat, and your mind fill with doubts, smile just a little. That's your sign you're standing on the edge of something important. Take a deep breath, straighten your back, and walk through that door, because on the other side of fear is you, stronger than you've ever been,